Good evening, I'm Ashok Gangadine, your Global Connection. Tonight, Buddhist wisdom in everyday life. In recent decades, there's been a growing interest in American culture in Buddhist wisdom and teachings. Why is this so? It seems that Buddhist wisdom has a capacity to blend with quite diverse cultures, religions, and lifestyles. Can Buddhist wisdom help us in our daily lives and provide a way of understanding personalities, emotions, and relationships? Have you had an encounter with the Buddhist way? We're delighted to have with us tonight author Irini Rockwell, who recently published 5 Wisdom Energies, a Buddhist way of understanding personalities, emotions, and relationships. In writing this book, Irini draws from her background in dance, psychotherapy, meditation, Buddhist wisdom, and leadership training. She served on the faculty of Naropa University for 10 years, and she currently facilitates 5 energy workshops throughout North America and Europe for educators, health professionals, organizational leaders, and artists. She's also the director of 5 Wisdoms Institute in Boulder. Irini, welcome back to Philly Live.
Thank you, Ashok.
You were here a couple of years ago. It was great to visit there. That's when the book first came out.
That's right, when it first came out.
Irini, help our viewers understand, how did you get involved in Buddhist wisdom in the first place?
Well, interestingly, as a lot of people, I was suffering a lot. And that's actually the first truth of Buddhism, is the truth of suffering. My mother died, and I had a lot of difficulty with that. And I met a Buddhist teacher. And
you were in the United States at that time?
I was in the United States. I was in Berkeley, California. And then I got led to another teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche, who's my teacher, and moved to Boulder and worked at Naropa University.
Now, he was instrumental in founding that, or?
He was instrumental in founding, Naropa University. He is the founder. He's the founder of an international organization called Shambhala International, with centers in really all over the world at this point.
Why were you attracted to him as a teacher?
That's a very good question, because what he created at Naropa, it was almost like a love affair with Naropa at first, because he managed to magnetize some amazing people, Westerners, he basically said, let's take any Western discipline and contemplicize it, and bring in Eastern thought and Eastern ways of working with it.
To make it contemplative, you mean?
Yes.
Meditative.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his definition of contemplative is 24-hour-a-day awareness. So I was a dancer. I was, an artist, professional, person with my own dance company. And here was somebody that was bringing this world of meditation and Buddhist thought together with my dancing. And it was an amazing experience, because before that, they were very separate. So they came together, and that's what Naropa is really about. It's really about bringing Eastern traditions and Western traditions together.
Irini, what helped you most in this encounter with Buddhist wisdom in your early stage? What mattered to you most? How did it help you most?
Well, I think encountering kindness from the teachers I had, the people who, other people in my community who sort of showed the way. And the other thing is that it really, I was at the point in my life where I really wanted to take the time for self-reflection. I had been in a very highly pressured dance career, as school, 3 years of school in a professional dance school in England, and then 4 years at Juilliard School in New York City. And I was I felt like my insides had somewhat withered, dried up, And I really wanted to go back to what was inner in me. And I think our society actually makes us very outwardly oriented. And one of the big contributions of Buddhism, or basically the spiritual path, personal growth, the whole panoply of personal growth possibilities, does direct one towards self-reflection, towards contemplation. And that is enriching, incredibly enriching. And it's sort of like when you do meditation, you say, this is the time that I'm working with just me and myself here.
Right. So this encounter helped you to become whole in some way.
Yeah.
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 Well,
And I had a wonderful guide. My first guide was Bill Soskin, who was my therapist. But he's the one that connected me to Buddhism.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, just to remind our friends at home, in case you're just joining us, I'm Ashok Gangadine. You're watching Philly Live, your global connection. And tonight we're focusing on Buddhist wisdom in everyday life. And I'm here with a fascinating person, author Irini Rockwell, and talking about her 5 Wisdom Energies, a book. And we're going to get into that in a moment. But if you've had an encounter with Buddhism or a Buddhist experience, or any questions about it, it's a great time to pick up the phone. Our lines are open. We'd love to hear from you and have you join us tonight. Irini, help us understand what, at the very heart, what is Buddhist wisdom? Can you state that in a nutshell for us?
A nutshell is very difficult, Ashok, but I'll try. We talked previously about the Four Noble Truths.
Yes.
The first one is the truth of suffering. And that if you really look at your life, pretty much everybody is suffering in some way.
What do you mean by suffering then? You mean just having pain?
Pain, confusion, getting into intense emotional states.
Right.
Yeah.
So the whole gamut. Is that
The whole
that's
gamut,
not just
the whole-
physical.
yeah.
It's you know.
Mental suffering,
That's right.
physical suffering.
Right. All kinds. Just to be a human being and living.
Yeah.
That was Buddha's great insight, wasn't it?
Yes, and it happens in our birth, happens in old age, sickness, death. We're suffering, and let alone the sort of what we call yuppie suffering. Oh, my computer doesn't work, you know. So, and then wars, violence, terrorism.
all of that,
I mean, it's so rampant in our society. And to just say, okay, this is the way things are, we're suffering, is a huge acknowledgement of truth. That's why it's called a truth.
Yeah. Now Karen from Mount Airy is with us, so let's welcome. Hi, Karen.
Hi, how you doing?
Welcome to Philly Live. Your question?
I wanted to know what, if any, is the difference between your type of Buddhism and Zen Buddhism?
Thank you. So there are different kinds of Buddhism, aren't there?
Absolutely.
The question was then, what's the difference between your own orientation and Zen Buddhism?
Yes, that's a great question. My particular lineage is Tibetan Buddhism, and I'm a student of Trungpa Rinpoche, who founded this Shambhala International. Zen Buddhism is from the Japanese tradition, and what's interesting also is that Trungpa Rinpoche adopted some things from Zen. He had some, Maizumi Roshi was a friend of his, and Suzuki Roshi was a friend of his, so he imported some things, and they had a real meeting of minds. But Tibetan Buddhism is sometimes called Vajrayana Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism, and it follows some of the same tenets of Zen Buddhism, but it emphasizes a being in the world in a very the world is sacred way. Yeah.
That is the Buddhism that you are practicing.
Yes, and I'm not saying that Zen Buddhism doesn't do that, but Zen Buddhism tends to be a little more austere, and Vajrayana Buddhism tends to include everything. Whether it includes, that drinking alcohol is permissible, whereas in Zen it's not. Right. That having parties is fine. In other words, there's a lot in Vajrayana Buddhism that is about celebrating life.
It takes you into the fabric of life.
Yes,
fully.
it's really celebrating life.
But now Karen's question is interesting,
Yeah.
because as you find different brands or orientations to Buddhist wisdom,
Yeah.
they still all seem to involve mindfulness in the moment.
Absolutely.
Don't they?
Yeah.
And you're helping our viewers understand that the core of Buddhist wisdom, it's their suffering. Let's pick
Their
up on that
suffering.
again. And what
Yeah.
what is Buddha's great prescription before that?
Well, let's go to the second noble truth, which is the origin of suffering, and that's really psychology. And Buddhism is also often called Buddhist psychology. It's the study of mind, and this isn't theoretical. It's like when you're being mindful of what's going on in your mind. It's a way of awakening to what's happening with your internal processes, mental processes, physical processes, how you're speaking.
So why would your psychology be responsible or connected with your suffering? The second noble truth, you say, has to do with, your inner...
The origin of suffering has to do with grasping and fixation. In other words, all our suffering is because we want something and we fixate it on it. And in that fixation, that sort of solidification of how I desire my world is what creates ego.
So it's more like an egocentric way of...
It's an egocentric way. And it has to do with this grasping and fixation onto other.
Right.
And then to get back to mindfulness, the third noble truth is the truth of cessation. And that in fact we are capable of having our suffering cease by being mindful. And Buddhists talk about renunciation a lot. And renunciation is like, sometimes thought of as this, this big thing that you have to take on. But actually, what it really is, it's turning one's mind towards what's wholesome. It's very simple. You renounce what's not wholesome, and you turn your mind towards what's wholesome.
Right.
And it takes a lot of mindfulness and awareness.
Now that seems to be the key to ending the suffering and living a wholesome life. How you're using your mind and your mindfulness. And that takes you to the fourth noble truth, isn't it?
Yes, which is basically that there is a path. There is, and the fourth noble truth is the path, the truth of the path. That there is a way, from the Buddhist perspective in this case, of conquering suffering, being all victorious over suffering, over your fear, your confusion, your neurosis, and that you can live the Buddhist way.
You can stop that grasping of the ego in some way.
Yeah, but it takes a tremendous amount of self-awareness to do that.
And is that where meditation comes in then?
Yeah. Generally, another way of talking about suffering is that we're caught in our habitual patterns. And our habitual patterns are deeply ingrained habitual patterns.
In how we're using our mind.
How we're using our mind, how we're speaking, how we're acting. And so one of the things that meditation does is slow us down. And when we slow down, we can be more attentive to what we're doing, what we're saying. And that's very powerful.
Is the key then in this way, this fourth way, the way that there is a way to be mindful and attentive, does that help you to overcome ego and get connected? Because I know that that's a very important part of Buddhist wisdom, that all things are connected.
Yes.
And could you talk about that a bit?
Yes. Now, one of the teachings of Vajrayana Buddhism is called Mandala Principle. In my book, I talk about it as the energetic matrix.
Right, we're going to look at that in a moment. We're going to have some visuals that we're going to put up here.
Yeah. And basically what that means is that everything in the universe is interconnected. So there's a totality. But there's also little mandalas. There's a mandala of Ashok, your personal mandala, your personal mix of energies, and how you connect your spiritual aspect, your everyday aspect, what you do at the university, what you do in your family. Those are all somehow a picture of who you are.
Well, good. I just want to encourage our viewers again, pick up the phone. The lines are open. Any questions you may have on the Buddhist way and Buddhist wisdom in our everyday lives. We're here with Irini Rockwell, author, who could really help us think that through, so please call us. Irini, let's look at some of these, the mandalas from your book. You have 5 of them, 5 energies. Basically in your book you're saying there are 5 energies and they have different names. Could you take us through them? What's the first one? Is it?
Well, the first one, and I'm going to give the real nutshell version here.
Yes, that's fine.
Is clarity. That's the essence.
We're going to put that up for you now. Here it is.
Clarity. It's the wisdom of it is clarity. These are called wisdom energies, and the wisdom here is clarity. But that very same wisdom also has its neurotic part, its confused part, its stuck part. And what this one does, it says, I'm clear, therefore I'm right, and starts self-referencing the clarity. When the clarity is kind of self-existing, things are just clear. There's no problem. But when you say, I'm clear, then it means the other person is not clear, or that I have the authority. So it's full of dogmatism and authoritarianism.
Again, that egocentric kind of arrogance.
Egocentric, yeah.
Right. So why is it blue?
Why is it blue? Well, with all of these, the colors have to do with psychological energy.
I see.
And the energy of space. And there's actually a practice for each of these.
Right.
There's 5 postures that we do to bring out the patterns of behavior.
Right, and the 5 different energies you're going to take us through, we've just seen one of them, clarity. Everyone has them, or everyone can have them?
Everyone has the potential for all 5, and combines them in their own unique way.
And this can help us become whole?
Yes, it's a way of balancing our energy. Unlike most personality studies, we're not trying to box ourselves into one energy and that energy, but rather we're trying to acknowledge that all 5 of these energies are a healthy way of balancing who we are.
Oh, I see. Well, now Misty from Mount Airies is with us. Then we'll continue
Misty.
with the Misty, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to start off by saying that I do believe that there are good Buddhist principles and there are good lessons that can come out of some of the Buddhist teachings. However, my challenge as I listen to the program is people who are in true suffering situations where they can't maybe necessarily correct it in their minds themselves, who are suffering with AIDS on today as it's National AIDS Day, or in abusive situations. You know, it doesn't seem to offer any hope, the principles, or help in those types of situations.
Right. Excellent question there, Misty. Thank you. So that's a great question.
It's a great question,
These
Misty.
extreme cases, can Buddhist wisdom help a person like that?
Yes, and not just alone. I mean, basically when you enter a Buddhist path, you take refuge in the Buddha as the teacher, the teachings, the Dharma or teachings, and also the community. And with something like AIDS or abuse or whatever, you really need to have a friend, a compassionate friend. And that friend, I'm not just talking about a friend, I'm talking about a therapist or a social worker or a Buddhist teacher. But the Buddhist teachings are very applicable, but you need guidance with them. So, you know, these challenging questions of our age, tremendous suffering that we're going through. I mean, it's from a Buddhist perspective, it's talked about as the Dark Ages.
Right.
That's what we're in.
Right. In terms of Misty's question, then the core of Buddhist wisdom, if suffering has to do also with ego and processing it that way, there's a healing that can take place.
There's a healing,
Right, so people who are in this extreme kind of suffering can be helped?
They can, but I would say that for someone like that, there needs to be someone guiding them.
Right.
And that's, in other words, it's much more than studying Buddhism or even practicing Buddhism. Like, for instance, I was in 4 years of therapy with this wonderful therapist who introduced me to Buddhism. And I basically feel that I probably couldn't have jumped into Buddhism straight away. I went through 4 years of therapy. It's a luxury, you know, in our day and age. Having a personal guide like that is a kind of luxury. Not everybody can have that.
Right.
But it's certainly helpful.
Right.
And not that I like every kind of therapy either, but you know, there's kinds of Buddhisms I probably would question as well.
Well, next caller is with us before
Great.
we get back to those other 4 energies.
Okay.
Is it Annie? Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
How are you tonight?
Well, fine, thank you.
Good.
Your question or comment?
Yeah. I was born a Roman Catholic, and I have evolved into a non-practicing atheist. But I'd like to know, because I've read some of Buddhist teachings, and I understand that he is more a philosopher than a god. And I'd like to know, how does one become a bit more spiritual?
Thank you very much. The complex question. You know, that she was a practicing Roman Catholic, but then she gave that up into a kind of atheistic approach. And so in terms of Buddha, he's not a god. You know,
Right.
About how can one, you know, advance or benefit from the encounter with Buddhist?
Yeah, well, what I find most important about Buddhism is that you have to do it. You can't just talk about it. So doing a Buddhist practice, like sitting meditation, gets you into states of mind that we could call spiritual. Now, spiritual isn't a word that I use an awful lot because it has so many misunderstandings if we use that word. But basically, we're trying to get into a way of being that transcends the petty discursive mind that so preoccupies us day in, day out. And if you want to get more spiritual, I would really suggest sitting meditation.
Right. So spirituality doesn't mean religion. It means a kind of attentiveness, awakened mind.
Awakened
which is
mind.
what Buddha is, the awakened one. I mean,
Buddha
so
is the awakened one,
so
and
that the
he is the example. He's the example.
Right.
So we don't worship him, but we honor him. We
Right.
respect him and his way.
Right. And in a way, everyone needs that kind of spirituality, whatever their religion,
Yes, absolutely.
or not religion.
Or not religion, yeah. I mean, an atheist, you know, from a certain perspective, being an atheist is not a problem at all. An atheist can still be a religious person or a spiritual person.
Now, this raises interesting questions about the possibility of how Buddhist wisdom can go into different worldviews and cultures.
Right.
But now Joe from West Philly is with us. We're going to come
Good.
back. Our themes. Hi, Joe.
Hi there. Look, since the mandala has no beginning and no end,
Yes.
and you can enter it anytime, anywhere, since Buddhism bases itself on eternal regeneration, what is Buddhism's take on first cause?
First cause.
And renunciation to liberation nexus, and what do you do with your freedom once you're recuperated?
Thank you. Complex question. This person
That is
obviously
a very
knows.
complex question.
Right. It's beginningless.
Yeah.
You know, and then first cause. You know,
Yeah,
and that.
yeah.
How do you deal with that? I mean,
Well, I would say that that's not something I think about a lot.
right.
You know, I hate to sort of shove it aside, and I don't mean to do that, but for me, the most important tenets of Buddhism are how we work with ourselves in a very immediate way. How can we be kind to other people? How can I live a better life that has to do with, as I was saying before, what is wholesome? So first cause is not something I have to say. I don't engage myself with those kinds
Buddha
of questions.
had a very precise answer when he was questioned about issues like Joe's question about metaphysics and the beginnings and so forth. I mean, what was his response?
You'd say.
Well, he said that those questions don't tend to edification. They don't.
Right.
He wants to remove the arrow of suffering.
Right.
And so, as you're saying, it's very pragmatic.
Yeah.
He wants to remove the suffering in the world and not
Yeah.
to get into
To
philosophical
dwell.
speculation.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Questions like that. Well, now, look, time is moving along, and I would like to
Okay.
help our viewers get the other four energies.
Other
so
four, yeah.
Let's try to go to the next ones then.
Okay, so the next one is richness, and this one has a sense of being completely, deeply satisfied in its wisdom. It's the wisdom of equanimity, like you need nothing more in the world. But along with that, when it gets self-referential, it's very arrogant.
Right.
And if you start feeling like maybe you don't have quite enough, which is always the thing, like, do I really have enough? You get needy and greedy. So you get stuck in
So
that.
in each case of these energies, you have a healthy balance, and then you have a kind of off-balance,
Where you get stuck.
confused. Yeah.
I like the words shine for the wisdom and stuck for the confusion or the neurosis.
Let's take the third one now, just to move along here.
Okay.
The next one is going to be
Passion.
passion. Here,
And-
it's up now.
Okay. So passion has to do this word passion in this case means connection. It means relational experiences with the world. You want the world up close. So you have a tremendous sense of wanting to feel your way through the world. And it's very pleasurable and charismatic and fun-loving and all of that. But on the other hand, this is where you really grasp, and your passion becomes an obsessive passion.
I see. It can go bad again.
It can go bad again.
Right.
It can go bad
Right.
again.
And the next one, the fourth one, is what? Analytic?
Activity.
Activity.
Activity. And activity is one that in our society we have a lot of. Its color is green.
Right.
And
Our culture is very green oriented.
Our culture is extremely green energy, because we're accomplishers. We're tremendous accomplishers. We want to get the job done. We want to be in control. We want to sort of move other people around, galvanize their energy to get ahead with this project. Right. But it creates a lot of competitiveness, paranoia. Democracy has tremendous amount of green energy, because you're always trying to keep the balance and be slightly ahead and looking over the shoulder at someone else. So
just 1 minute left. Let's go to the last one, the fifth one.
Okay, this is the one that's most missing in our society.
And this
is spaciousness.
Spaciousness. What does that mean?
This is more with Eastern societies have a sense of spaciousness, contemplative. It's the sense that things are slowed down, spacious, accommodating, and this is one that in our society we need to cultivate. We really need to bring that in, because it actually supports the wisdom of all the other energies.
Right. Well, time's just about up, Irini, and you do workshops on these 5 energies,
I
don't
do,
you?
yeah.
And what you use them to help people get a sense of their own orientations?
Yeah.
And how to balance.
I work in Buddhist centers a lot, and I for personal growth, and educators. In Holland, they're taking this work into the schools everywhere, because I've been working with trainers there. So I work everywhere from California to Istanbul.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to have you come back. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Ashok.
And thank you for watching Philly Live and for your great phone calls tonight. And if you have any questions about tonight's topic or our other programs, go to our website at WYBE.org. And join Deborah tomorrow night when she talks about gay fraternities. And I'll be back next week with The Power of Oneness. For Philly Live, I'm Ashok Angadine. Have a great evening. Good night.